You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynne Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 1st of October. Historic allegation for Savile of assault in children's home. Love-struck teacher wants to be extradited to be near Meghan. People killing sheep on Dartmoor for food. 3 bodies found in Hampshire. Flash floods in southern Spain kill British woman. Performing killer whale injured at Sea World. Thought for the day, are things really fair and just in the press? And finally, hey ho. UK news. It has been reported that Sir Zumas Savile was interviewed under caution by the police in Surrey about sexual assault allegations dating back to the 1970s, which were alleged to have occurred at a children's home in Staines. However, as is usually the case, the Crown Prosecution Service advised the police that there was insufficient evidence for prosecution, the force said on Monday. This is the first time that sexual assault charges have been made public since the death of Mr Savile. These allegations have come to light when 10 women informed an ITV documentary that they were assaulted by the Jim'll Fix It star who died in 2011 when they were in their teens. Mark Williams-Thomas, the former Surrey Police Child Protection Officer who is behind the ITV1 documentary, told The Guardian that at least 2 women gave statements alleging sexual abuse by Savile to Surrey Police in 2007. It has been alleged that the BBC turned a blind eye to his goings-on as he was a famous star at that time. Jeremy Forrest's French solicitor, Daniel Lynne, has quoted his client as saying that his romance with Megan Stammers, 15, is a story only about love that will never end, and insists he never hurt her or would do so. In fact, Lynne claims that Forrest is desperate to be extradited back to the UK so he can be closer to the one he loves, after spending 8 days on the run, obviously ably assisted by Megan, who it is thought was travelling on Forrest's wife's passport. Forrest will appear at a Bordeaux court on Tuesday for the start of extradition proceedings, whilst the love of his life flew home over the weekend with 2 child protection officers for company. People called by the press starving scavengers are being forced to the brink of recession and are killing sheep in a remote Dartmoor beauty spot and butchering them on the spot for their meat, livestock protection officers report. Experts have reported that animals are being dismembered on Dartmoor, Devon or stolen alive to be killed later. Carla McKechnie, Dartmoor Livestock Protection Officer, has stated, "We found sheep where joints like the leg and shoulder have been carefully cut away. They're the sort of joints you'd have in a roast dinner. I saw another kill which had all its legs removed," she added. A World at 8 reporter commented, "I wonder if these starving people are of the same ethnicity that are killing our swans for food. If only a small portion of them are performing this nasty act, it goes to show the respect they have for our country and our animals is virtually nil. Third world people, third world standards." 3 bodies have been found near a car on a path in Newton Stacey, Andover. They've been named as Michael Peterson, 51, of Chertsey, Surrey, and Ben Peterson, 7, and Freya Peterson, 6, both of Ashford, Middlesex, said a Hampshire police spokesman. Hampshire police were informed by a member of the public who found the bodies at around 6:15 last night. The police are not saying whether the 3 are related, but are not looking for anyone else in this tragedy. European news. Torrential rain and flash floods have brought carnage to Almeria in southern Spain. They've left over 10 dead, including a British expat whose body was washed up in a lagoon. Diana Dudas, 52, was reported missing from Vera. She had a Spanish husband, Javier, and had lived in Spain for some years. It is believed she has a family in the UK. Her friend, Jenny Sutcliffe, 56, said she had her own holistic therapy clinic and hairdressers in the town and had just written a book. "We are absolutely devastated." World news. Nakai, the performing killer whale, has suffered a horrific injury at a SeaWorld theme park in San Diego, which has left its jawbone exposed, prompting fury from animal rights groups. The pictures show Nakai with a gash on his chin. The pictures were leaked online by an unnamed whistleblower. In a statement, SeaWorld said the injury was caused by contact from a portion of the pool environment. However, other reports mention a fight between Nakai and two other whales, Ike and Keat. Journalist Tim Zimmerman has commented, "It happened last week during a night show, seemingly during a major altercation involving Nakai, Keat and Ike. It's not clear if there was an aggressor or an instigator, or if they all went suddenly after each other. In response to the altercation, Nakai split over to the back pool. The onstage trainers, not realising how badly injured he was, continued the show with the other whales. It was only after they called Nakai over later that night that they realised he was seriously hurt." However, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA, have complained to the US Department of Agriculture. They have accused SeaWorld of housing killer whales together incompatibly, a direct violation of the Animal Welfare Act, AWA. A World Date writer commented, "It is obvious that these wonderful animals are housed in two small centres. To have three of them in together in a confined space compared to the open sea is cruel. The only thing SeaWorld is interested in is bums on seats, nothing more." Thought for the day. Are things really fair and just in the press? Well, they say you cannot believe everything you read in the press, but there is another, more sinister side to this statement. Whilst we are encouraged not to believe what is printed, we are subjected to, as a nation, a large amount of misinformation and cover-ups from just that media source. Take the Times and the final revelations of the Asian grooming gangs, and the blame firmly laid at the door of the police. Now they use this word Asian, not me, which is yet another muddying of the waters, so to speak. You will notice over the 3 days these articles by our old enemy Norfolk of BNP jumping on the bandwagon fame in the Times, you will also have read of the many paedophiles and white gangs who so-called groom girls for prostitution on the streets. We have always had men like this, although they do seem to be growing in numbers, helped by the black and Eastern European gangs. These men import their girls as well as use girls from the UK. Although being used to muddy the Muslim grooming waters, the modus operandi of these gangs is very different from the Muslim sexual groomers of underage girls. First, not all Muslims are sexual groomers, but most sexual groomers of a certain type are Muslims of any ethnicity. Their girls, when broken in, are brought to specific houses where they are put into a room and the entertainment begins, and most of the clients, if not all, are from the family of the groomer or friends and Muslims. These girls are returned home each night to avoid their parents being worried. The girls are threatened on pain of death not to tell anyone. The money is paid to the groomers, not to the girls, as in street prostitutes. I was looking at the news and saw the teacher and his pupil on the run in France and was even more disgusted when Megan, a very attractive and grown-up girl, was flanked on her return flight home by 2 child protection officers. Why? She may be underage, but it was obviously a joint venture to go to France and be together. Mr Forrest is suitably besotted and wouldn't hurt a hair on her head, so why the panic? It takes your mind off the northern scandals. What do our female children get when or if thousands of cases are reported and followed up? Child protection officers battering down the doors of the groomers, pictures of these perverts all over the papers, stories of how much money they make from each child, graphic pictures of their families and their homes, news items on every channel covering the awfulness of what is still going on? No. Almost total silence and a few pages in which the letters of one child have been doctored to hide the identity of her abuser. No use at all. Whilst an able-bodied and precocious young girl probably seduced the poor bugger of a teacher because her hormones hit a high. I, for one, do not feel one iota of sympathy for her, but I do feel it for him, because he will be hung out to dry on the altar of political correctness as a white, middle-class, married teacher. He will fit the bill as the demonised white working and middle classes are in the press. Poor Forrest will assume the mantle of paedophile, although, from her pictures, Megan Stammer could teach working girls a few tricks, but being older, Forrest will be put on the sex offenders register, which is laughable in itself, and it's clear that Megan is not a child in any sense of the word. But of course all this brouhaha over these two is merely dressing to take away the real crimes being committed here. The Charlene Downs case was barely touched on in this article, which is the nearest the press has ever come to actually printing anything about sexual grooming, although the waters were considerably muddled. Muslim or non-Muslim crimes are revealed, although not in that wording of course. We must not offend these people who take our children and destroy generations of childbearing girls who, even if they survive, will rarely be fit to be mothers, even if they still have the urge to do so. Yet another way of colonisation. So while Stammer can boast of 2 child protection officers taking care of her, What did Charlene get? Well, a close encounter with a kebab, and I do not mean that in a humorous way. Mrs Downs did receive a harassment order against her which forbade her to communicate with Mr Albertiki or Mr Raveshi by letter, telephone or computer. It also states that Mrs Downs is not to enter Mad About Chicken on Talbot Road, Cafe Express shop on St Chad's Road and Yum Yum Fish on Chip Shops in the Promenade. Now this is in her own hometown of Blackpool, and it was her daughter who was murdered. This order ties up with the indefinite ASBO given to Mrs Walker in Fareham, who had sent out leaflets which specifically covered the Charlene Downs murder. Not a national blacking out of any reference of this crime? Now if the authorities had been serious in getting a conviction, why didn't they arrest Albertiki on statutory rape charges? She was only 14 and certainly in a different league to our Meghan. Why? Because although these two disgusting scroats are Jordanian, they are Muslim. Part of the great brotherhood of Islam that seems to have our laws, lawyers, police and the CPS well in pocket. Albertiki admitted in one breath that he had had sex with Charlene, in another he had never met her, although on some tapes he described her in the following terms. Albertiki laughed and said she was very small, the plainest possible indication that he was lying to the police when he said he did not know her. He and others present then laughingly said that Charlene had gone into the kebabs. He was also heard to say that Charlene Downs was not even from a decent or important family. For some effing bitch she was effing Maya, a effing horrible Maya. What a really nasty individual. Also of the same nasty family as his brother Tarek, of whom Emma, Charlene's elder sister, was accused of racially abusing in a club. Tarek, after a dispute with Iliad, informed on his brother to a witness, David Cassidy, that he knew what had happened to Charlene. She had been killed and chopped up and there had been a lot of blood. Mr Cassidy was allegedly later offered a £20,000 interest-free loan from Raveshi. Now put this in with the media blackout during these trials and abortive police work and the fact that one of the female jurors was allegedly banging one of the accused and she acquired a fully paid up house after the trial that fell through, and I think there is something really stinking in Blackpool, and I do not mean the poor gullible children being taken in by a portion of chips and rape drugs. So we have horrendous crimes that when barely published in all their nastiness are immediately obliterated by what? Jimmy Savile, a really dirty old man. I can speak personally because although I never met him, I never liked him, although he was supposed to do a lot for charity. He also did a lot for very young girls apparently, however he did it without the grooming bit of cheap trinkets and drinks, he just did it. The news is full of people saying, why now he's dead? Well people, it could be anything to save certain Muslims losing face. Even a true, dead, homeborn, white British star who allegedly molested young girls anywhere he could find them, even at a children's home. Of course the police do not shine here, do they? Surrey police can now claim the laurels for at least being seen as to looking into complaints, but with the CPS, our old pro-paedophile and anti-nationalist loving pals, nothing of course was done in 2007. Why? Because Savile was still alive. So in the midst of all this information, lousy trials, bribing, deception and much worse, we still have to rely on the papers to print something. As long as we realise we are reading what they intend us to read and no more. There have been many cases of Asian, Muslim, black on white crimes, but they never last more than a couple of paragraphs, if that. One thought though, how do the Chinese, who dress in European fashion, keep to themselves and for whom I do have a fleeting respect, despite their animal rights and their strange longing to eat anything that swims, slither, fly or jump, like to be put in the category of Asian sexual groomers? Because they are part of the Asian community, but not part of the Muslim community. Likewise the Thais, Nepalese, Indians, Sikhs and more non-Muslim Asians. Talk about muddying the waters, the bastards who pay the National Union of Journalists should be shot. The world could end and we would be the last to know about it. I have more revelations coming up at a later date on cover-ups, so don't miss the world at 8 and keep your comments coming. I love them. And finally, hey-ho! Oswald Davis, 49, of Castorping, Lambwythe, pleaded guilty at Swansea Crown Court to endangering the lives of passengers when he pulled 2 giant hay trailers onto a train line as he travelled from West Wales to Manchester. 7 passengers were injured in the smash-up as bales of hay were scattered far and wide. The cost of the incident is estimated at £250,000 and some of the passengers are still feeling the effects. A bit hay-struck. The engine driver could not stop in time, and Davies thought that the maintenance workers from Network Rail had lowered the safety barrier as a prank. Davies has been released on bail and will be sentenced later this month. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynne and I wish you all a very good night. On Forrest's wife's passport. Forrest will appear at a Bordeaux court on Tuesday for the start of extradition proceedings, whilst the love of his life flew home over the weekend with 2 child protection officers for company. People called by the press starving scavengers are being forced to the brink of recession and are killing sheep in a remote Dartmoor beauty spot and butchering them on the spot for their meat, livestock protection officers report. Experts have reported that animals are being dismembered on Dartmoor, Devon, or stolen alive to be killed later. Carla McKechnie died. People killing sheep on Dartmoor for food. 3 bodies found in Hampshire. Flash floods in southern Spain kill British woman. Performing killer whale injured at Sea World. Thought for the day, are things really fair and just in the press? And finally, hey ho. UK news. It has been reported that Sir Jimmy Savile was interviewed under caution by the police in Surrey about sexual assault allegations dating back to the 1970s, which were alleged to have occurred at a children's home in Staines.
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynne Mozart. The World at 8. The number 1 in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 1st of October. Historic allegation for Savile of assault in children's home. Love-struck teacher wants to be extradited to be near Meghan. Police in 2007. It has been alleged that the BBC turned a blind eye to his goings-on as he was a famous star at that time. Jeremy Forrest's French solicitor, Daniel Lynne, has quoted his client as saying that his romance with Megan Stammers, 15, is a story only about love that will never end, and insists he never hurt her or would do so. In fact, Lynne claims that Forrest is desperate to be extradited back to the UK so he can be closer to the one he loves, after spending 8 days on the run, obviously ably assisted by Meghan, who it is thought was travelling. However, as is usually the case, the Crown Prosecution Service advised the police that there was insufficient evidence for prosecution, the force said on Monday. This is the first time that sexual assault charges have been made public since the death of Mr Savile. These allegations have come to light when 10 women informed an ITV documentary that they were assaulted by the Jim Will Fix It star who died in 2011 when they were in their teens. Mark Williams-Thomas, the former Surrey Police Child Protection Officer who is behind the ITV1 documentary, told The Guardian that at least 2 women gave statements alleging sexual abuse by Savile to Surrey